Hello, 8th grade math students. Welcome back to school. This will be our first video lesson. So let's get started. So today we are going to be doing a lot of definitions, but all will be necessary for the upcoming lesson. So today's lesson, as I stated, is going to be lesson 1.1a, square roots and cubed roots. The standard that we'll be working on, the objective, is going to be I can find square roots and cubed roots. So starting with definitions, what is a squared number? A squared number is a number that is multiplied by itself. Not by the little exponent, but by itself. So for example, 2 squared is equal to 2 times itself, 2, which is equal to 4. 3 squared is equal to 3 times itself, 3, which equals 9. Never, never, never multiply the 3 times the little 2, because that would give you an incorrect answer of 6. A lot of students make that error. Remember that it's the base number multiplied by itself. So 4 squared is really the same as 4 times 4, which is equal to 16. You can also square fractions. So for example, 1/5 squared is the same as multiplying 1/5 times 1/5. So that would give you 1 on the top and 25 on the bottom. So you'd have 1/25. The same goes for 1/6 squared. That would be 1/6 times 1/6, which is really 1/36. What is a square root? You see the symbol there on your screen of a square root. It is the number when multiplied by itself gives you the answer that appears under the square root sign. So it's just the opposite of squaring a number. So some examples would include the square root of 4 is equal to 2. 2 is the square root, because if I multiply 2 by itself, I will get the answer under the square root sign of 4. The square root of 9 is equal to 3, because 3 is the square root. If I multiply 3 by itself, 3 times 3, I will get the answer of 9 under the square root sign. Note there are 2 square roots for every positive number. So for example, the square root of 4 is equal to 2 and negative 2, because 2 times 2 equals 4. And also, if you remember, negative 2 times negative 2 will also equal a positive 4, because 2 negative numbers multiplied together gives you a positive answer. Same with the square root of 9. It will have 2 answers, 3 and negative 3, because 3 times 3 equals 9, but also negative 3 times negative 3 will also give you a positive 9. And that will work with any square root. The square root sign can sometimes be written like this. You have a little 2, which is called the index. That is the index. You have the symbol, which is called the radical symbol. That is the radical symbol. And finally, you have a number under the radical symbol, which is called the radicand. So this will be more important later on when you get to cubed roots, roots that go by 4s, 5th roots, 6th roots, 7th roots, etc. as you get into higher math. So the principal square root is the positive only square root. Remember, we said there's a negative and a positive answer for all square roots. But the principal square root is only the positive answer. So for example, the square root of 25, what is the square root of that? 5 and negative 5, correct. But the principal square root is only the positive value of 5. What is a perfect square? A perfect square is a number that has a square root that is an integer. So for example, you can square 1 and you'll get 1. So 1 is a perfect square. You can square 2, which will give you 4. So 4 is a perfect square. You could square 3 and get 9. So 9 is a perfect square. You could continue on with that and get 4 squared equals 16. So 16 is a perfect square. 5 squared equals 25. So 25 is a perfect square. It would be a really good idea to memorize up through, I would say, 15 squared, so that you are familiar with which numbers are perfect squares. You can also have perfect squares that are fractions. For example, 1/7 squared is equal to 1/49. So 1/49 is also a perfect square. What about cubed numbers? What is that? A cube number is a number multiplied by itself 3 times. So for example, 2 to the third power, or 2 cubed, is equal to 2 times itself again. So 2 times 2 times 2, which is equal to 8. 3 cubed is equal to 3 times 3 times 3. So that is equal to 27. You can also do cubes with fractions. 1/4 cubed is equal to 1/4 times 1/4 times 1/4, which will then give you 1/64. So what is a cubed root? That is going to be the opposite of cubing a number, just like with square roots. The number, when multiplied by itself 3 times, gives you the answer that appears under the cubed root sign. And notice, for the cubed root sign, you will always have the little index 3 to indicate that it is not a square root, but instead it is a cubed root. So for example, the cube root of 27, what would that be? You have to think of a number multiplied by itself and multiplied by itself again to give you an answer of 27. You got to think backwards a little bit when you do cubed roots. Did you figure it out to be 3? Great, because we know that 3 times 3 times 3 equals 27. Here's another one. What's the cubed root of 125? Think about that one a little bit. What could that possibly be? Some number multiplied by itself and then multiplied by itself again to give you 125 as an answer. Did you guess 5? Great job. So 5 times 5 times 5 is actually equal to 125. What is a perfect cube? It's the same thing as when we did perfect squares. So a number that is a perfect cube has a cube root that is an integer, a whole number on the number line. So for example, 2 to the third power, or 2 cubed, is equal to 8. 8 is a perfect cube. 3 cubed is equal to 27. So 27 is a perfect cube. 5 to the third is equal to 125. So 125 is a perfect cube. You can also use your calculator for squares and cubes. So there are calculator buttons that can find square roots and cube roots, and they are especially useful for very large square roots and cube roots that you may not be familiar with. So for example, you may not know what the answer is to the square root of 169. That may not be a number that you're familiar with, but you have a button on your calculator called the square root button that can easily find the answer, and it looks like a square root symbol with an X underneath it. If you type in the number 169 and hit the square root of X button, you will get the answer of 13. So at a moment later on after the video, give it a try and see if you can figure out how to use your calculator with some of these new buttons that you'll be using this year. Here's another example with a calculator. Cube roots are even harder to find by hand. You probably don't know what the answer is to this very easily. What is the cube root of 4,913? There is a number that multiplied by itself and then multiplied by itself again will give you 4,913. But that one's a pretty hard one with trial and error to figure out. But not if you have your calculator. You have a button called the cube root calculator button that can easily help you find the answer. It looks like a little 3 as an index with the square root of an x underneath. So you can find that button. Usually it's above the square root button, and you have to hit the inverse key and then hit the square root button in order to use the cube root key. It's usually in a different color. It's either gray or gold or something of that color. So if you do that and you hit 4913 and then you hit the inverse button and the cubed root of x button, you will get the answer of 17, which means that 17 times 17 times 17 will give you 4,913. You can also likewise use the buttons on your calculator to find the square or cube of a number. So you may not know what the answer is to 26.23 squared. And yes, you can have decimals that are squared. That's not unusual. So if you do not know off the top of your head 26.23 squared, you could multiply that large number by times itself, or you could use your calculator and hit the x squared button. So you would put in 26.23 and hit the x squared button, and you would easily be given the answer of, can't see that because the little thing is down there, 26.23 squared is equal to 688.0129. Another example, you may not know what the answer to 14 to the third power is, or 14 cubed. However, you have a calculator button, x to the third power, that will easily give you the answer. That is also usually an inverse key. It's usually above the x squared button. It's usually a different color, gold or gray. You have to hit the inverse key before you can get to the x third button. So 14 to the third, you would type in 14 inverse, and then the x to the third key, you would get 2,744. That means that 14 times 14 times 14 is 2,744. So your homework is going to be doing lesson 1.1a. You're going to be doing a worksheet on square roots, cube roots, rational and irrational numbers worksheet. So we are going to do a few of those problems here, and let me bring that up. Exit this thing here and go to our worksheet. You should be able to see that on your screen. I'll come back on here. So this is the worksheet I would like you to start with, your first homework assignment of the year. Isn't that exciting? Okay, so let's look at the very first one, number 1. Bring down my tools here and get a nice color. So 2 squared is the same as 2 times 2, right? So what is 2 times 2? Well, it's 4, correct. What about number 3? 1/6 squared. That's the same as 1/6 times 1/6. So what would that give you? 136, because 6 times 6 on the bottom is 36. Correct. Let's look at number 5. 1.3 squared. Now, I know you're all thinking, oh, I got that new way of using my calculator button to figure that out. And if you know that, that's great. Let's also try it by hand as well, because we're going to be wanting to remember our math skills here for a bit. So what do we do when we multiply two numbers? 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 1 is 3. Then we go to the number 1. So our answer is going to start under the 1. So I'm just going to put an X here to be my placeholder. You might want to put a 0 there. A lot of people do that. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 1 is 1. And then we add our two partial products. And we get 9 plus nothing is 9. 3 plus 3 is 6. And 1 plus nothing is 1. So 1.3 squared. We're not quite done yet. We got one number after the decimal here. And we got one number after the decimal here. So we have to have two numbers after the decimal. So our decimal starts at the end and we go two numbers. 1, 2. So that's where our decimal is going. So the correct answer to this number 5 is 1.69. So remember I said we could have decimals that get squared or even cubed for that matter. Let's look at, clear these, look at number 9. Now we're getting into some cube roots. So 5 to the third power or 5 cubed. Never, never, never multiply 5 times the little exponent 3. That is not going to give you the right answer. So it's 5 times itself. How many times? Exactly 3 times. So 5 times 5 times 5. So 5 times 5 is 25. And then times another 5. And yes, you can try it on your calculator, but please try it first by hand and then check it with the calculator. 5 times 5 is 25, so I put down the 5 and I carry my 2. 2 times 5 is 10, plus 2 more is 12. So 5 to the third power is 125. And after working with these for a bit now in this unit, it's going to become easier and more familiar, and you'll be able to quickly recognize 125, the cube root of it is 5, or 5 to the third power is equal to 125. You'll start getting to recognize that. I also want to do number 13. Go up a little bit here. Number 13, now we're doing the opposite. So we want to find the square root of 4. So we need a number that multiplied by itself will give us the answer of 4. So yes, that would be 2, because 2 times itself will give you 4. Look at number 14, the square root of 49. What number multiplied by itself gives you 49? 7, correct. Very good. Okay, let's look at number 20. Number 20. Now we've got the cubed root of a fraction, 64 over 243. So what we really have here is the cubed root, and I'm just going to rewrite it with the 64 on top and the 243 on the bottom. And I'm actually going to make my cubed root a little smaller because you can break it down into really the cubed root of 64 and the cubed root of 243. So what is the cubed root of 64? What number multiplied by itself 3 times will give you 64? Well, I think you could do 4, right? Because 4 times 4 is 16, and then another 4 should give you 64. 4 times 6 is 24, carry the 2. 4 plus 1, 4 times 1 is 4, plus 2 is 6, 64. So yes, the top number is a 4. What about the cubed root of 243? That one's a little bit harder to figure out. You can do trial and error a little bit on that, or you can know to use your calculator. I'm going to do my calculator here and see what I get. 243 shift cubed root. Doesn't look like it's an even number. I wonder if that's the typo on that one. I'm going to double check. On the calculator, 13 times 13 times 13. That's too big. 5 is 125. Let's try 8 times 8 times 8. That's 512. That's too high. So let's try 6 times 6 times 6. That's 216. 7 times 7 times 7 is 343. There's our typo. So that should really be a 3, not a 2. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that before I give you the worksheet. So now we'll get a perfect square. 343. And if I do the shift and the cubed root key, I get 7. So 7 times 7 times 7 is 343. Okay, let's try number 23. Now we're getting x squared equals 196. So what could x equal? Well, we have to find a number to find x. If you remember this from last year, if you have x squared, you're going to want to take the square root of both sides. The square root of x squared is x, and then we need the square root of 196. So we need a number that multiplied by itself will give you 196. If you don't know it off the top of your head, you can use the square root button on your calculator. I got 14. So the square root of 196 is 14. But remember, it is also, do you remember? Negative 14. Because negative 14 times negative 14 will give you 196. Yay! All right, 24. Let's try that one. X squared is equal to 1/25. So that's the same as taking the square root of 1 over the square root of 25. So what is the square root of 1? What number multiplied by itself will give you 1? Yes, 1, right? And what number multiplied by itself will give you 25? Yes, 5. So 1/5 is one of the answers. And what is the other answer? Negative 1/5. Very good. Awesome. Okay. Now, let's see if I want to do a couple more here. Let's clear this. Let's do number 20. I think it's up on the next page here, in the bottom. Number 27. X to the third equals 27. So we need a number multiplied by itself times itself again to give us 27. So x to the third equals 27 is really the same as taking the cubed root of both sides of the equation, little 3 in there. So the cubed root of x to the third is x. The cubed root of 27, what number times what number times what number? The same number will give you 27. You said 3, you are exactly right, because 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. And when you have cubed roots, you do not have a negative answer as well as a positive answer. Because if you were to take negative 3, I'll show you why this is, because negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 is going to give you what? Well, negative 3 times negative 3 is going to give you positive 9 times another negative 3 here. That's going to give you a negative 27 answer. And we have a positive 27. So with cubed roots, you'll never have a negative answer. Let's look at number 28. X cubed is equal to 1/8. So we have the cubed root of 1 over the cubed root of 8. What is the cubed root of 1? What number times itself 3 times will give you 1? Well, 1 times 1 times 1. So 1 on the top. What number multiplied by itself 3 times is going to give you 8? Yes, 2. So that answer is 1/2. And again, only the positive value that's going to be there. So, to clear our drawing. So that is your homework. So good luck. Reach out to me if you have any questions. and we will see you shortly. Have a good day.